There's a reason why the Jamaican flag's the only one in the world that doesn't share a single colour with the US flag. It's because this island does everything its own way. From a wicked pirate capital that vanished into the sea, to a modern economy that just stared down a Category 5 hurricane and didn't blink, Jamaica is a masterclass in resilience. It's a place of rhythm, spice, and world record speed. But how did they get here? Let's trace the journey from the beginning. Long before the resorts and the cruise ships, around 600 AD, a group called the Tainos arrived. They migrated from South America and found an absolute paradise. They called it Jamaica, which means the land of wood and water. And honestly, we owe a lot of our daily vocabulary to them. Like, for instance, if you've ever chilled in a hammock, worried about a hurricane, grilled on a barbecue, or paddled a canoe, you're speaking Taino. Tragically, this peaceful era ended in 1494 when Christopher Columbus showed up during his second voyage. He called it the fairest island that eyes have beheld. But for the Tainos, it was the beginning of the end, because between forced labour and European diseases they had no immunity, and the Taino population was virtually wiped out within 50 years. It's a heavy start, but their spirit of resistance lived on. Many chose to fight or even commit suicide rather than live in chains. The Spanish settled the island in 1510, but they weren't actually that obsessed with Jamaica. Why? No gold. Instead, they used the island as a giant rest stop and farmed to feed their ships travelling between Europe and the Americas. But more than that, they also started the horrific practice of bringing enslaved people from West Africa to work these lands. And by 1655, the British decided to join in and drove the Spanish out. Now, this is where it gets wild. During the chaos of the British takeover, many enslaved people escaped into the mountainous interior. They became the Maroons, a legendary group of freedom fighters who established their own independent communities and fought the British for decades. Meanwhile, on the coast, the British turned Port Royal into a pirate headquarters. We're talking real-life pirates of the Caribbean. Famous privateers like Sir Henry Morgan used the city to stash stolen Spanish gold. It became known as the wickedest city in the world, until 1692, when a massive earthquake literally sank half the city into the ocean. Kind of like nature's way of hitting the reset button, I guess. With the pirates gone, the British turned Jamaica into a sugar machine, and by the 18th century it was one of the most valuable colonies in the world, but it was built on an incredibly brutal system of slavery. So, between the 1500s and 1807, more than 1 million people were kidnapped from West Africa, mostly from modern-day Ghana and Nigeria, and shipped to Jamaica. The conditions were nightmare level, and to make it worse, the average life expectancy for a slave on a plantation, just 7 years. But the Jamaican people never stopped fighting, whether it was the Maroons in the mountains who actually forced the British to sign a peace treaty in 1739, or leaders like Paul Bogle and George William Gordon. The pressure for freedom was relentless. Finally, on August 1st, 1838, full emancipation was won. After slavery ended, the plantation system collapsed because, surprise, people didn't want to work for their former oppressors. So, to fill the labour gap, the British brought in indentured labourers from India, China, and the Middle East. Fast forward to the 1930s. The Great Depression hit Jamaica hard, leading to riots and a massive push for self-rule. Two cousins, Norman Manley and Alexander Bustamante, stepped up to lead the charge, forming the political parties that still dominate the island today. Then on August 6, 1962, the British flag was lowered for the last time. Jamaica became an independent nation, flying the black, green and gold. And as they say, hardships there are, but the land is green and the sun shineth. So now that we know how Jamaica became a nation, let's talk about the land itself, because honestly the geography here is just as dramatic as its history. Jamaica actually started as a massive tectonic collision between the North American and Caribbean plates about 25 million years ago. So, technically, what you're looking at today is essentially the tip of a massive underwater mountain rising straight off the ocean floor. The island isn't huge, covering about 10,991 square kilometres, or 4,244 square miles. Nearly half of the island sits more than 330 metres, or 1,000 feet above sea level, which creates a landscape that is way more than just beaches. You have these sharp, crested ridges and unique formations called cockpit karst, which are basically deep limestone valleys and steep hills that look like a giant egg carton from the sky. Then, if you head to the eastern side of the island, you'll find the legendary Blue Mountains. This is the rugged spine of the country, and it's where you'll find Blue Mountain Peak, the highest point on the island at 2,256 metres, or about 7,400 feet. Up there, the air is totally different. While the coast usually hangs around a balmy 27 degrees Celsius or 80 degrees Fahrenheit, the highlands stay much cooler at around 22 degrees Celsius or 72 degrees Fahrenheit. It's often misty and wet, which is why the coffee grown there is world famous. From these central mountains, about 120 rivers flow down toward the sea, creating some of the most stunning waterfalls and limestone caves you've ever seen. To the north, the land drops off into those picture postcard white sand beaches and coral reefs that tourists love in places like Montego Bay, Ocho Rios, and Negril. But if you look at the south coast, it's a bit more sheltered and rugged. That's where you'll find the capital, Kingston, which sits right on the edge of the 7th largest natural harbour in the entire world. The island is also a literal powerhouse of biodiversity. Because of the varying altitudes and rainfall, over 3,000 species of plants thrive here, and about 1/4 of them can't be found anywhere else on Earth. You'll see the doctor bird, or the swallowtail hummingbird, flitting around, which is a national symbol and totally unique to Jamaica. About 40% of the land is still lush woodland, while 50% is dedicated to farming the fertile soil of the lowlands. The rest of the island is rich with natural resources like bauxite, gypsum, and limestone. It's a tropical maritime paradise, though everyone keeps an eye on the horizon between June and November, which is the official hurricane season in the Caribbean. Alright, let's get into the business side of things. If the geography we just talked about is the body of Jamaica, then the politics and economy are the brain and the engine. And man, that engine has had to work overtime lately. To understand where Jamaica is right now, we have to talk about a massive curveball, Hurricane Melissa. This was a Category 5 beast, the strongest to ever hit the island, and it left an $8.8 billion trail of damage. To put that in perspective, that's about 40% of the country's 2024 GDP. Imagine nearly half of everything the country produces in a year just gone. Because of this, the economy is taking a temporary hit. We're looking at a 2% contraction for the full year of 2025 and another 1.8% dip in 2026. But don't count them out. The projected recovery for 2027 and 2028 is actually looking solid, with growth expected to average around 3%. One reason for that optimism: tourism. Even after the storm, 70% of hotel operators were back in action almost immediately. And tourism, along with its indirect effects, makes up a massive 30% of the total GDP. Plus, people living abroad are sending money back home like crazy. That's why remittances hit nearly $3.36 billion in 2024. And in 2025, the projected GDP is around $23.14 billion. Now let's look at the government's piggy bank. Jamaica is actually a global legend when it comes to fiscal discipline. For the last 10 years, they have been the only country out of 141 rated by major agencies to maintain an annual primary surplus of over 3% of GDP. They've managed to slash their public debt from a staggering 144% of GDP back in 2013 to about 73.4% in 2023. Even with the hurricane forcing them to borrow more for rebuilding, they expect debt to hit 55% next year and drop back to 50% by 2028. Politically, Jamaica is a rock-solid democracy. Whether it's the Jamaica Labour Party, or JLP, or the People's National Party, PNP, in power, both sides actually agree on the big stuff, keeping debt low and the economy stable. They've even set up a multi-layered disaster fund, including a $150 million catastrophe bond and access to a $3.6 billion credit line from international lenders, so they aren't starting from scratch when a storm hits. On the ground level, the Bank of Jamaica is keeping a close eye on your wallet. Inflation was sitting at a cool 3.3% in mid-2025, but because of the hurricane's impact on food and energy, they expect it to jump to about 6% in 2026. Additionally, The central bank has kept its policy rate at 5.75% to keep things from spiralling. For the 2.8 million people living here, the goal is now building back better. While the average GDP per capita dipped to about $8,100 due to the storm, the focus is on diversifying into mining, agriculture, and manufacturing. So the island isn't just relying on sunshine and cruise ships. Now, if you really want to understand the vibe of Jamaica, you have to look at the mix of Europe and Africa. It's a place where British parliamentary systems sit right next to West African spiritual traditions. And somehow, it just works. Let's start with the language. Technically, English is the official tongue, but the real heart of the island beats in Jamaican Patois. It's this beautiful, rhythmic Creole that mixes English with West African dialects. For a long time, proper academics looked down on it, but legendary poets like Louise Bennett Coverley fought to prove that Patois is the true literary voice of the people. Now, if there's one thing that defines Jamaica to the world, it's the music. In the 1950s and 60s, artists took a local dance music called mento and evolved it into ska. From those roots, reggae was born, and that's when icons like Bob Marley and Peter Tosh didn't just make catchy tunes. They exported a message of justice and one love to the entire planet. Today that energy lives on in dancehall, where toasting or rapping DJs keep the energy at 100%. Now, we can't talk about the vibe without talking about the food. Jamaican cuisine is basically a history lesson on a plate. You've got African, Indian, Spanish, and British influences all melting together. The national dish is ackee and saltfish, usually served with boiled green bananas or fried plantains. And of course, there's jerk. Whether it's chicken or pork, it's marinated in a spicy blend of pimento, Scotch bonnet peppers, and ginger, then grilled over pimento wood. From the food, let's look at daily life here. And it's all about family. Like, it's super common to see 3 generations living under one roof, with grandmothers often holding the fort while parents head to work. Weekdays are busy, but Sunday is sacred. Even the tightest budgets find a way to put on a massive Sunday lunch with rice and peas, which, fun fact, is actually made with kidney beans or gungo peas. When it comes to celebrations, Jamaicans go big. Emancipation Day on August 1st and Independence Day on August 6th are huge. Of course, we can't forget Carnival in April either, where the streets of Kingston turn into a sea of costumes and dancing. And we have to talk about sports. For a small island, Jamaica is a global powerhouse. Cricket used to be the undisputed king, but since the Reggae Boys made the World Cup in 1998, football has been closing the gap. But let's be real, the world knows Jamaica for its sprinters. Ever since the 1948 London Games, the island has been producing world beaters. And then came Usain Bolt. Watching him break world records in 2008, 2009 and 2012 made Jamaica the unofficial sprint capital of the world. Even their unsuccessful bids are legendary. Who hasn't seen Cool Runnings? The 1988 bobsled team proved that even without snow, Jamaican spirit can conquer any arena. All in all, Jamaica is a place of incredible depth. It's an island that was born from struggle, but chose to speak to the world through rhythm, spice, and speed. So remember when we talked about how Patois became the voice of the people? What's a local slang word from your hometown that carries as much soul as a Jamaican proverb? Let me know in the comments down below. And as always, if you enjoyed this video, you'll love this next one.